Welcome to the Confidently Balance Your Hormones podcast. My name is Dee Davidson, and I'm a hormone health expert, master mindset coach, and multiple wellness business entrepreneur. I'm obsessed with helping you experience hormone balance, confidence, self-love, and live a life full of joy. I know we're about to have so much fun together, so thank you so much for pushing play today. And now let's begin. Welcome to another episode of Confidently Balance Your Hormones. This is your guide, Dee Davidson, and today I have Nicole Finn joining me. She is a functional nutritionist specializing in uncovering the root cause of disease, utilizing the power of electromagnetic muscle testing, nutrition, and supplements. She owns a health food store with her mom in Rainham, Massachusetts called Aspire Health and Nutrition, where they sell high quality vitamins, supplements, herbs, and more. And you're going to hear a lot about the muscle testing that I was so curious about. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited to learn more from you and also get you in front of my audience. Let's just
Yeah.
start with what inspired you to even start this holistic health business?
So back in 2017, around age 18, I was dealing with some really weird, mysterious symptoms, and it came on pretty suddenly. So I didn't know what was happening because I was seemingly healthy my whole life. Nothing more than like the common cold every year. And so my symptoms were starting to manifest sort of like they were mimicking hypothyroid symptoms.
Okay.
And so I had a family friend that was dealing with Lyme disease at the time, and it was really bad. It was chronic, and at the time, the CDC didn't recognize Lyme to be chronic, so she had to go the holistic route. And so she had recommended me to go see one of the person that she was seeing, and she did something called OnDemed, which is a form of biofeedback,
Okay.
and it was incredible. So the biofeedback was kind of like my open door into the holistic world because I realized like there's so much more possibility in actually healing with the
Sure.
holistic world rather than, because conventional medical doctors just didn't have the answers for me. So I just thought it was so fascinating and it did really help me. But I was so dysregulated at that point that I knew I needed something more. But
Mm-hmm.
she was such a great guide for me when I first started. And it was really cool because I didn't know this until I started working for her. But she had like some of her clients were from like the NFL and the NBA.
Oh, cool.
And so it was cool that even like professional athletes were utilizing the power of frequency medicine.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's becoming more known and more talked about, a little more well accepted now. Scrolling through my Instagram and seeing a lot of athletes and stars and things like that really tapping into the power of it is pretty cool.
Yeah, there's so much out there. And later that year I actually ended up getting diagnosed with Lyme disease and it
Oh, wow.
was in its chronic state. And it was that was like the beginning. I was so tired. I went from dancing because I was a
Mhm.
dancer growing up from
Mhm.
like, I don't know, anywhere from 18 hours a week to
Mhm.
barely being able to walk a half a mile without needing
Wow.
to sleep for 3 hours. It was so, it happened so fast.
Hmm.
And then a few months later, I was diagnosed with um, Epstein-Barr virus,
Hmm.
hypothyroidism, and then eventually polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Wow. And, I
Yeah.
talk about this a lot with my clients that these are all, even though they're diagnoses, they're all symptoms of greater imbalance, which we'll talk about in a minute. But, people get so stuck to the identity of the disease. I have Lyme, I have
Yep.
PCOS, right? And
Yes.
if we could just step back and understand that the body, I believe, can heal from anything if we look at where the hidden stressors are, where the imbalances are in the body, it's a miraculous thing, but we can't attach to the fact that we're stuck with this for the rest of our life. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I believe that if there's a cause for everything, there is a cure for everything,
Oh,
God
I love
willing.
that. I love that. I love that. With
Yeah.
your Lyme, I'm just curious, were you able to treat that holistically and be rid of it?
Completely, yeah.
Yeah.
So I initially the person that had diagnosed me, she was an integrative practitioner
Uh-huh.
and she did a full Lyme test on me. So it wasn't just the regular like 5 strands that usually a regular doctor will test you for. We did the one from the company's called Igenics out of California.
Okay.
And so it was like a full test, and that's how I found out that I had it. And
Mm.
so she did have me go on antibiotics, but she also offered like holistic supplements as well. So I didn't completely destroy myself.
Hmm.
But I at the time I didn't know anything
Sure.
about holistic health, so I kind of I didn't listen as much as I should have. And yeah.
And what
But
about
yeah, no, completely.
yeah, what about the PCOS? I know I have a lot of people that follow me for hormone balance, and it's such a common thing. And I also feel like it's become a buzzword now. I see it everywhere, like PCOS, PCOS. What do you think is driving that?
PCOS, honestly, the biggest thing that I see, because I work with quite a few people with PCOS, I notice that every single one of them have an overgrowth of yeast,
Mm,
almost every single one of them.
interesting.
And so I noticed like and that was what happened with me because I went on all those antibiotics. I didn't take my probiotics like she had recommended me to as much as I should have.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up having really bad thrush from it. I
Uh,
was like yeast infections all the time. Um, and that's when I was diagnosed with PCOS was after I went through all those antibiotics. So it just now I'm seeing it in practice, I'm like,
Interesting.
oh, that makes sense.
I know, a lot of times I tell people we don't see things going forward, we see things in reverse, looking in the rearview mirror of how we got
Yes,
there, right? It's
exactly.
amazing when you connect all the dots together. Oh, okay. And with what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense as well because I've seen with a lot of clients that blood sugar balance is a huge thing. So here we are
Mhm.
feeding the yeast with, the sugar.
Sugar.
Right.
Exactly. And you know what's funny? Even like, so I've had one client that was pretty resistant and she looked a lot like me, like as far as symptoms and health history. And so I went through like the anti-candida diet. I did, sugar-free. I tried to hammer it really hard so that I could completely get rid of it. But what I figured out was with the PCOS, if your cortisol levels are high, you
Mm,
know this, when your
yes,
cortisol's high, your blood sugar's high,
that's right.
the yeast is still going to stay in the system
Yeah.
until you
True.
lower your stress and lower that
True.
sugar.
That's true.
And
I
so
have
that
a
was
client right
interesting.
now that I'm working with, and she is high stress. I actually have a call with her tomorrow, and she wants to talk about her nutrition again, and she's trying to conceive. And I know her blood sugar is dysregulated, and she's running on stress. She's running in that fight or flight. And that's the tough
Yep.
thing is that so many women want like the answer, they want to just fix it, but it's in
Hmm.
the more difficult things that we have to shift in their life. It's not just going on a candida diet or you're not eating processed food. There's a lot of pieces that we have to look at when it comes to rebalancing the body and making the body feel safe.
Right,
That's a
exactly.
great point. It's a great point. Um,
Even like on the spiritual level too, I'm a big believer that
mhm.
spiritual health is so important for
Yes, me too.
overall health because the mind is so powerful and like we don't give it enough credit. Um, And even just like in my own life, like with hormonal imbalances and anything ovarian related, it's typically rooted in, insecurity, feeling like you're not good enough. And
Yes.
then when you have PCOS, you have like that extra layer of fat, and it's your body's way of protecting itself because you're so used to like putting up that emotional or energetic wall.
Makes so much sense. Makes so
Yeah.
much sense. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about the muscle testing. I just want to share that in my own practice. I've talked about these things at high level, the liver being linked to anger and things like that. Because we have a lot of women who have stagnant livers, right?
Yep.
And really helping people understand that the spiritual health isn't out here, it's inside, right?
Hmm.
So we have to address the body as a whole. That's why it's called whole health, mind, body, and spirit. So I am definitely on the same page as you with that. I tell people supplements and lab testing and nutrition and exercise, that's all great. We have to be ready, though, to also look at the spiritual piece in order to finally help the body, you know, get to homeostasis or find ease and balance. And that's the more challenging piece that people like to avoid.
Yep. They don't want to go down that. It's hard. I mean, no one wants to like dive into those hardcore memories and traumas. But once you do like the other end of it, the other end of forgiveness or bitterness, whatever it is, like it's just you feel so free. So I'm
That's
such
what
a
I
big
always
believer in
say.
that.
That's what I say, and again, there's no judgment. If I've told people, even on discovery sessions, if you don't want to go there, that's okay. And I honor that. But in order to have freedom, or I'll tell my client, like they'll want to work on all of these things, but we know that these spiritual pieces or boundaries or whatever, toxic relationships, things they don't want to talk about from their childhood, like I just don't want to go there. That's fine.
Hmm.
And I can honor that. But if you want to have true freedom, you have to go there.
Yep, big
You just
time.
have to. So
Yeah.
what is the electromagnetic muscle testing? What is that?
Good question. So, electromagnetic muscle testing, I actually learned. So, I've been doing muscle testing since I was 18. That practitioner that I first had seen, she would do muscle testing on me, but she'd use a pendulum. And I
Okay.
was in the room, or even like if I wasn't in the room, like I'd be at home, she would muscle test. I didn't understand it, but I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then so I always knew muscle testing to be sort of like a pass or fail. So, what it is, it's a neuromuscular biofeedback technique. So you're tapping into the body's biofield and detecting for any imbalances. So a lot of practitioners that use muscle testing, they're testing yes or no questions, so pass or fail. So it's like,
Mhm.
you know, can D have spinach? Yes or no? If it's a yes, that's as far as they take it. And they're like, okay, so she can have spinach, incorporate that in your diet. Electromagnetic muscle testing takes it one step further. And so you're pulse testing. So you're testing, well, how good is it? So is it between a +1 or is it up to like a +7, +8, +9?
Okay.
Um, so electromagnetic muscle testing is pulse testing the body's organs and glands to detect for any imbalances.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so I think you told me the answer to this when we spoke the last time. Does this need to be done in person? Does someone physically have to come see you to do this work?
No, not at all. So because of the way that have you ever heard of quantum entanglement?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so you know what quantum entanglement
But
is.
our listeners might not. So maybe if you want to give them like a quick little snippet of what that means.
Yeah, definitely. So quantum entanglement um, is essentially back in 2022, three quantum physicists got a Nobel Prize for proving that there were two particles that they were looking at under a microscope, and they had no connection to each other at all, but they seemingly were communicating with each other. And so what they figured out is that everybody in this universe is connected because we're all made up of particles. So I actually do muscle test prior to the appointment. I don't like pressing on my client's arm just because for me, I don't feel it's as accurate because not everybody is dialed in. There's sort of like a dialogue that you have to have. Like I said, is spinach good? Is it bad? How good is it? How bad is it? The same with supplements. Supplements are full of energy as well. So, testing how compatible is this with their chemistry. It takes me about 30 minutes. So it can be a lot on the client's body. Um, and so I actually do the whole chart before they even step foot in the door.
Wow. Who are
Yeah.
the typical people that are finding you?
Honestly, just about anybody. I
Okay.
work with anybody from hormonal imbalances like endometriosis, infertility, PCOS. I also have worked with people with autoimmune conditions,
Uh-huh.
even rare ones. My first ever client, she didn't know it. She was my first client that I muscle tested, but she had autoimmune encephalography, I believe. And so she had brain inflammation. And so I've never worked with somebody with brain
Mm,
inflammation, but um, and even like all the way up to cancer. So I see a lot of people that are just dysregulated and even women that are like, I just want to lose weight, but their body is so dysregulated. We have
hmm
to get to the root of why.
hmm
Um, so yeah.
You just reminded me earlier, you were saying that you were so dysregulated. I know what that is. I look forward to my children. I see it in people around me because, I'm an empath and I'm very intuitive myself, right? And I'm like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, that person's so dysregulated right now.
Yep.
Again, we don't know who's going to listen to this. So what is the meaning of being dysregulated? What exactly is that?
Yeah. So dysregulation essentially is your body is showing you signs and symptoms, and it's your body's way of communicating to you that it needs some support. And so it can show up in the form of anxiety, depression, acne, weight gain, weight loss, pain. Pain is a big indicator that your body is in need of some support. So it's really just showing you where your body needs help.
Mm,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I think
One of
people suffer, right? And they think this is just the norm. Like everybody gets
mhm.
headaches, everybody has aches and pains or digestive issues. People just think, oh, this is normal.
Yeah. And it's not, it's common, but it's not normal.
Right.
Especially in America, it's common.
Yes.
But even looking at it from an energetic perspective, everything can be measured in frequency.
Uh-huh.
And so a healthy human body is between 62 to 70 hertz. And anything below 62 hertz is when disease starts to manifest.
Mm.
So that's why I'm such a big believer in focusing on the energetic perspective,
Uh-huh.
because everything as we know it, according to quantum science, is energy. It's
Right.
99.99% energy and 0.001% matter. And the problem with a lot of medical doctors is they just really focus on that 0.001% and they don't take
Yes.
into account everything else about the
That's
individual.
right. That's right. How do we
Yeah.
measure frequency to know like what frequency we're at?
So I don't measure frequency, I just measure the imbalances. So you kind of know if you're not at optimal level if you are dealing with symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Dis-ease doesn't necessarily mean a diagnosis, it just is a symptom. So
Mm-hmm.
you're uncomfortable in some sort of way.
Mm-hmm. Wow,
Yeah.
so fascinating. It's so fascinating to hear how you can tap into that and really help people identify. Is it the same if I come to you and you do this muscle testing? Is it the same for everybody, or is it different based on what people's symptoms are? What can someone expect when they come and get this done with you?
Everybody is totally different. There may be some similarities. Like I've only had one client where their adrenals did not come up, but that's because she did so much spiritual work on herself over the last, I don't even know how old she was, at least 10 or 20 years. And so she really didn't have any stress in her life because she was so free. But adrenals is something that always comes up with people, but for the most part, everybody is so different.
Hmm.
So, um, what I do is I'll muscle test every organ and every gland, and then whatever imbalances come up, I'll also go back and I'll test which one is the root or the driver of their symptoms. It could be either an organ imbalance or deficiency. It could also be a bacteria, virus, yeast, mold, parasite. So because everything is can be measured in frequencies, parasites, viruses, molds, bacteria, all that also has a frequency. And
Hmm.
so my favorite thing to tell people is that when we're working with food and with supplements, when you look at it from an energetic perspective, everybody, because everything is energy, when you fill yourself up with good energy, you elevate the frequency of the body.
Hmm.
Um, and so when you muscle test for imbalances, I can go back and I test which one is the root of their symptoms.
Okay.
So it could be their liver, it could be a bacteria, it could be both. Um, I usually see one or two roots. There could be three or four. Everybody's
Okay.
different.
And how do you resolve these?
So once I find out what the root is, I'll then go back and I'll test a food list for them. So I'll muscle test a whole foods list. So fruits, vegetables, meats, starches, that kind of thing. And then I'll also muscle test a supplement protocol.
Okay. And
Yeah.
the
So it'll
supplements, are they short term, long term? What do you find with the supplements?
depends, but usually short term. So I always will test for dose, duration, and frequency.
Mhm.
So doses like, one capsule, two capsule, one
Mhm.
drop, two drop, whatever. Um, Duration is how long are they taking it? So are they doing it once a week, twice a week, every day?
Mhm.
And then frequency, so are they on it for a month, 2 months? Usually like the longest I've had somebody stay on the same supplement was 6 months,
Okay.
but never any longer than that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So what are some of the misconceptions around muscle testing?
good question. So, I really don't think that people know how powerful the mind really is. Like
Uh-huh.
we're not aware with how
So unfortunate that they don't, right?
I know. I mean, like learning all this. I'm like, why isn't more people talk? Like, why don't people talk about this? The mind isn't limited like the body is. So, like our thoughts are even creating electricity,
Yes.
and they're traveling at quantum speed throughout the universe, whether you intend for them to, whether you realize they
It's
are.
really scary. I've been in this situation personally where I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I just done? Right. But again,
Yeah.
you have to just go with it because nothing is happening. Um, like you're not getting off your path. Like whatever is, you just thought or you're creating is your path, right? It's happening for
Mhm.
you, not to you. All
Yeah,
of that, right? It is crazy. And I tell my clients when they say negative things about themselves or, self-deprecating, I'm always like, don't speak anything that you don't want to come into existence.
exactly. It's so true because even thinking it travels and we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. And I even catch myself now like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, right? You know what I mean? Because you don't want to speak things into existence
Well,
that you
someone
don't
told me
want.
that there is a piece to the awareness, though, because a lot of people are just thinking without awareness. But someone told me, I don't know if it's true or not, that if you're aware of the thought and you can reel it back in, that it's not as dangerous.
Yeah, you could like I could see yeah, like you cancel it out.
Yeah, you're conscious of it, right? You're a conscious being and like, oh, I didn't really mean that. Let me
Yeah.
reframe it.
And it's interesting because have you ever heard of Dr. Carolyn Leaf? She's pretty
No,
popular. So
no.
Dr. Carolyn Leaf, she's a Christian neuroscientist. And so she's even said that like your mind is so much more powerful than your body because your thoughts travel through your cells.
Mm,
And so your thoughts are literally activating or deactivating certain cells. And they're traveling through the quantum field at
mhm.
vast distances. And so it's really important, like what you think. And then like the people that will they'll wake up and they'll set their intentions for the day.
Yes.
You're onto something because you really are putting it out there
Right.
energetically. It's really interesting. So
Yes.
yeah, I guess that would be kind of that misconception is that people don't realize how powerful our mind really is, and detecting the root cause of imbalance is so easy. So when I learned this system, I learned it from a holistic nutritionist and quantum healer out of Braintree, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And when I was interning for him, there was five of us sitting in a room, and one of my friends, I actually have a podcast with her. She said, "What is the root of?" Or no, she said, "What's the remedy for hyperhidrosis?"
Okay.
And he was like, "Don't look for the remedy, look for the root." And so he goes through the whole EMT chart in 30 seconds flat. The root of your hyperhidrosis is, and he figured out in 30 seconds that is
Wow.
because he wasn't digesting protein. And then
Ah.
we're all looking around like, oh my gosh, like doctors would do tests, they'll like
Oh,
throw
yeah.
you a pill, there'd be months and months and months, they still wouldn't have an answer for you. And he just figured it out in 30 seconds.
I know it's pretty amazing. I just did some functional lab testing with someone and explained to them because I think it's more than with my clients, I tell them I don't treat the paper, I treat the person, right? So it's like we're not
Yeah.
looking at just this is your number on a piece of paper. It's important for my clients to be educated, informed on how their body works and why things are showing up the way that they will. But this gal who she sent me her file of years of doctor's appointments and labs, and she's like, so you're telling me that all these doctors that I went to and no one ever saw this, right? So
Right.
yeah, it's like it's again, it's not okay, you're deficient in iron, let me give you an iron pill. It's like, why is that happening? Where is the vital void, right? Where is the healing opportunity? Um,
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. Because once you treat the root, the symptoms disappear. It doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. And, my friend, she's like, well, my whole family has it. And he's like, well, the root for your family is going to be different than you. And
yeah,
so as soon as she started taking a protease supplement 3 weeks later, something that she had been dealing with for her whole life went away.
so cool. And that's
Yeah.
life changing. When I talk to people about root cause medicine, it's not just about making the symptom go away. You feel better, you can show up differently to the world, and that's a ripple effect to the collective. It's not just about like I don't have a stomach ache anymore. You have
Hmm.
energy, you wake up, you feel invigorated. It's just a totally different vibe,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. When you heal yourself, you heal the collective whole because
It's
we're all
true.
connected.
It's true. It's true. Good
Yeah.
or bad, right?
Yeah, it's
So it's
true.
important to be careful who you're sharing energy with.
Yeah, no, it's so true.
How about I'm sure you have people that call you up and they might just be skeptical. What would you say to anyone that's skeptical of this?
That's a good question. Um, it's definitely you have to be open-minded. So I would say, we've been so indoctrinated to this current system of healthcare.
Yes.
But I love bringing it back to the quantum science because a lot of people, they're like, show me the science, show
Hmm.
me the data. There's so much data out there showing how, um, what's the word? Just how impactful muscle testing is. So, you're really just communicating with the body's energy field.
Hmm.
And quantum science has proven, those neurons that are constantly creating energy are communicating to the muscles. And so
Hmm.
that's essentially how you get those positive or negative feedback loops.
Are there any resources or studies or anything that you could point us to if anyone's wondering?
Yes, this is a very interesting one. The University of Washington back in 2014 did a study on um, conscious brain-to-brain communication. And so what they and I can send you the link. They have a whole
Okay,
video on
yeah,
it. It's
drop
only
it in
like
the
3 minutes
show
long. Yeah. And so they put these electrodes on two people's brains, and they found the area of the brain that is like that can communicate without language.
notes.
And so what they did was they put the electrodes on both brains. They put them like I think they said 7 miles apart.
Hmm.
And one person was to look at a screen, and he had to play this game where he was to defend a city by
Okay.
using a cannon. And then the
Okay.
other person who couldn't look at the screen 7 miles away had to hit the cannon when he got the signal from the other person's
Oh,
brain.
wow.
And they showed it immediately when he had to press the cannon, it happened.
I love that.
Yeah. So
That's
even
the
on a
stuff that I
scientific
geek out on.
level, yeah, it's so fascinating. So that's why it works so well, like, and it's so accurate, it's so painful, it's so easy.
Hmm.
Even if you were to be, in Europe and I'm here in Massachusetts, like I would still get accurate results because those stimuli work at quantum speed, which
Hmm.
is faster than the speed of light.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Super fun. And I can tell how passionate you are about it.
Oh, it's so cool. And I know like so I am a Christian. I love Jesus. I love all that. And I'm
Amen.
a big believer in the spiritual world. Yeah. And so I know like there's a lot of like religious kickback with some of this stuff, but I really do feel like I was led to this.
Same.
And it's really yeah, it's just incredible. I don't know. I'm a firm believer, and I think that a lot of I heard a really cool story a couple years ago. There was this guy that I listened to his podcast, and he was I think he grew up Catholic and he believed in God, and something happened and he kind of left the church and
Hmm.
he kind of went down the energy route into sort of like the quantum realm.
Hmm.
And he did a full circle because he realized that a lot of what quantum science has revealed has proven a lot of the stuff that's happened in the Bible. And I just think that's really cool.
Yeah. Sounds like me, actually. I grew up,
Really?
oh gosh, I grew up, my parents, they're like appalled that I don't go to Catholic church every Sunday and Ash Wednesday and all of those things. But I never really lost touch with the fact that I was a spiritual person, right? And
Hmm.
that I had that connection to God. But then I got into a lot of the energy stuff and manifestation and referring to the universe as opposed to God or talking about Jesus. And it's probably in the last few years that I've really circled back to that and felt a deep, deep connection and pull
Hmm.
towards it and now talk about it a lot more with my clients as opposed to, I come from a corporate background. I was like, you don't talk about that. But I feel like
Yep.
this is my God-given purpose. How can I not talk about God or Jesus, right? Like
You're
I
right.
you can't even make it up. I had a discovery session with this woman a few weeks ago, and this has been pulling me more and more. And there's no accident that you're here right now, right? Like that we're having this
Hmm.
conversation. But this woman, she gets on for her discovery session. She's in her kitchen. And especially in Massachusetts, because I feel like if we were down south, it would be more so, people talking about this openly than in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
But this woman gets on, and right behind her in her kitchen is a picture, just a headshot of Jesus. And I just smiled, right? Because this woman, she's like probably in her 60s, right? And all I can see is Jesus staring at me. I'm like, oh my gosh, like you cannot even make this up. And a few minutes into our conversation, she asked me if I believed in like, not Jesus, but she asked me if I believed in like a higher power and connection and all of that stuff that I incorporate in my practice. And I was like, oh my gosh. I said to her, who's that picture behind you? And she stopped and she said, Jesus. And I'm like, and I shared with her, I said, I just keep feeling drawn and called more to speak my truth because
Hmm.
sometimes the society that we live in kind of suppresses that,
Big time.
especially with all the given events. And again, I honor and serve everyone, right? Whether they believe it or not. But I feel like more uh, people who are in alignment are finding me, which again, that's energy, right? That's
Yeah,
all
you're
energy,
absolutely
right?
right.
There are people, they gravitate towards us. And since I've made that
Mhm.
shift, it's been a different um, clientele that has been coming to me that's more open to talking about the spiritual connection as well. Because a lot of people have lost that, and we need to, I believe, refine that connection.
I 100% agree because it's like there has to be something bigger than us. Do you know what I
Yes,
mean? Like if don't
yes,
tell me I'm it, okay? And
yes.
in just the fact that like the quantum realm really just drives that home for a lot of like to me I think it's so cool because I've never been a non-believer. So
Yes.
for those that are, I think going down the quantum route can really just kind of give you that solid evidence that like God is real. There's even evidence of it in the quantum realm. There's you can't disprove God.
Well, it's
Um,
fun to play with the system, right? When I say play, I mean that in the most respectful way. But I pray a lot, and I'm very connected, and to just see, sometimes we want to see the physical signs, right? Whether it be
mhm.
numerology or that bird or that thing, or you just ask for a sign and you know exactly what it means. It's
Yep.
just become like living is so fun. That's why when you said some people aren't really open to the fact that everything is energy, I'm so sad for them, because even this morning driving home from the gym and I sat outside and I'm like, living can be so fun when you're a conscious being and connected to something greater,
Yes. Yeah,
right?
definitely. Yeah, because I mean, God, he's not a God of mistakes and but he's a God of detail. So like like anything, there's always been, I'm sure you can attest to this. There's like times during the day where I'm like, no one would have been able to understand what just happened except for God because he put that in my
Right.
path,
That's
something that
right.
only you and him would understand.
That's right. Exactly. So
Yeah.
what is a story, or give us a testimonial as to how you've used this to help someone?
Yeah. I have a few. Oh my gosh.
Mhm, I'm sure you do. And I think it's
Um,
amazing you started this at such a young age.
Yeah,
What a
yeah. I
blessing.
mean, I just kind of always, I mean, I grew up in a single parent household. So I
Mm.
kind of learned from my mom, like, if you want something to get done, you do it yourself. And so I kind of always had that mindset of like, okay, well, if nobody can have the answers for me, I'll go out and find them myself.
Sure.
And so so my very first client I mentioned earlier, she had that rare autoimmune condition. So for those that don't know, it was brain inflammation, and she got it from a vaccine injury that she got as a baby. And so she was doing these immune treatments every month, and she was just so exhausted, a lot of digestive issues. She could barely make it through the day without having to nap for a couple hours in between lunch and dinner. And even after that, she was still just so wiped out. So I did the whole EMT chart on her. I did the whole system, and what came up for her root was her small intestine.
Mm.
Um, and so obviously a lot of people talk about that gut-brain connection, and that instantly like a light bulb went off. I was like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh. So I muscle tested her a food plan. So I gave her sort of I don't believe in a one size fits all diet
Mhm.
protocol,
Same.
but I did think that the autoimmune paleo plan was going to be really good for her, but I modified it to her.
Hmm.
And then I also muscle tested a supplement plan, and within 6 weeks she was like 60% better.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then honest, this is another one really quick one. This is my favorite one. Um, so back in June, I was saying out loud, I was like, I would really like to work with cancer patients. My dad had passed away from cancer, and just knowing
Oh,
what I know now about the mind body, like I just
sure,
know if he was around, like he would
sure,
think this was so cool.
sure.
So I was like, I kind of want to work with cancer clients and see what happens. So anyways, somebody sent one to me the week later. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so
Oh,
it
that
was
might have been your
somebody,
dad, by the way.
yeah, it's possible. I'm like, thanks. So I sit down with her, I did her whole chart, and I mean, she could barely walk from her car to the door without having to sit down. She was so tired. She was in a lot of pain. She had stage 3 colon cancer. And so she was burnt from the inside out due to the radiation, and the chemotherapy made her hair fall out, and she was just so pale
Mm-hmm.
and very, very weak. So I don't remember. So her root was her large intestine, but she had a bacteria in her large intestine that had come up. And also something that I test for is cervical bridge, and those are the emotional points, anger, fear,
Okay.
and sadness.
Uh-huh.
And sadness had come up for her. And so in traditional Chinese medicine, sadness is correlated to the lung and the large intestine.
Uh-huh.
So I did the whole protocol on her, and she came in a month later because she had to go back um, to see if she had to get the colostomy bag.
Uh-huh.
And so I wanted to see her right before she went in just to retest her and give her something before
Sure.
she went. And she looked like a different person. In just 1 month, she went from barely being able to walk from the door or from her car to the door to walking through the grocery store every single
So
week.
cool.
And then a month after that, she was walking 45 minutes a day, 6 days a week. And she just looked incredible. She had color back in her skin. She had very, very little pain. Um, her bowel movements were a lot more normal and regular. Yeah, it was just one of my favorite stories.
That's awesome. And, we won't get too into it, but, I just shared a video this morning and you're definitely onto something because a lot more people are having cancer, a lot of younger people,
Yeah.
and a lot more advanced cancer. I just listened to a doctor just this morning I shared on Instagram where he said that especially young people, they might, it would even be a freak thing if they had stage one and people go, oh my gosh, you have stage one cancer, you're 20 something or whatever, 30 something. But now people are, the rise in cancer is very alarming and people are finding out at like stage four.
Mm.
So I'm sure there is going to be a lot of healing work for you to do, my dear.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
blessing.
it is scary that a lot of people are starting to get it so much younger now. Like you usually think, oh, cancer, that's
Hmm.
later down the line, but there's a lot of even
Hmm.
children with cancer now, and it's
Oh,
really
yeah.
sad.
It's
But
and
yeah, no,
one out
I'm
of two people. One out of two people will have some kind of cancer in their
oh
lifetime.
wow.
Yeah, it's one out of two people, and only 10% is genetic. And we know that genes express themselves because of outside
Mm-hmm.
influences. But only 10% of all cancer is genetic, starts genetic. It's 90%
Mm-hmm.
environmentally
Yeah,
expressed. So it's pretty crazy.
it is. We're definitely in the right space to help people. It's exciting. And
Yes,
just
and I
seeing
know
that
we'll
the shifts
be.
happen so quickly, it's awesome.
Yeah, and I know we'll be doing a lot of work together. I love what you're doing, and I want to continue to learn and grow with you. So, for the people who are listening, where can they connect with you and how do they learn more?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. My mom and I own the business together, so she posts a lot of like spiritual stuff. She's a Christian life coach. So she helps people get sort of to the spiritual root cause of disease.
Mm,
Um, our Instagram and Facebook is Aspire Health and Nutrition. We also our website is aspirehealthnutrition.com. And my friend Isabel and I also have a podcast called The Healing Revolution on Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble.
great. And let's
Yeah.
just leave the listeners with if someone is kind of on the fence, what's your last words or advice to them?
A good question. Okay.
I know we didn't prepare for this, right?
No, that's okay.
You
I
could only
think
say one thing to them. What would you say right now?
the best advice that I got when I first got diagnosed with Lyme was instead of focusing on killing the Lyme, because that's a lot of what people do,
Uh-huh.
lose weight, kill
Uh-huh.
Lyme, do this, was instead of focusing on that, focus on making your body so healthy that it doesn't want to live there anymore. And I
I
think
love
that can be used in any sort of health
such a
condition is
positive.
yeah, make your body so healthy that disease doesn't want to live there.
Oh, I love that. Well, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Confidently Balancing Your Hormones. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love for you to share it with a friend and also hit follow at the top of this podcast. If you have a couple of minutes and you can leave a quick review, it will help other women in need find this podcast. You can find me on Instagram at confidently_love_yourself. I would love to stay connected and hear from you.